Investments are a way of preserving capital for future use. Like $100 today is not the same $100 in 10 years time. So first and foremost, consider buying something tangible. Hello everyone, my name is Tapiwa Munyawiri. I'm a qualified chartered accountant and also a qualified certified financial analyst. I think this gives me a bit of knowledge to be able to answer the questions which have been sent to me by Anna. Thank you so much. So I'll try answer the 11 questions. Question number 1, I've already given a brief description about myself and what I do. Oh, by the way, I work in funds administration. Question number 2, what are investments and why should one even think of investing? Investments are a way of preserving capital for future use. Primarily, I think on a secondary basis, investments are also used to generate income. And lastly, investments are a good way to hedge against inflation. Our parents used to put money under a pillow, but when you look at it, it doesn't work. $100 today is not the same $100 in 10 years time. Sometimes just because of inflation. With the harsh economy, question number 3, with the harsh economy right now in Zimbabwe and perhaps across the world, what different types of investment can one consider? Well, I think I would advise that people first and foremost consider buying something tangible if you're in Zimbabwe. And I mean, this could be something as big as a house if you've got the resources. But if you don't have the resources, you can just get a piece of land, or you can even get something like cattle rather, or you can invest in a small business where you're buying and selling and do things which, number 1, will, like I mentioned, preserve your capital, and number 2, you'll be in a position to generate some income. Obviously, people always talk about buying shares on the stock market. It's exciting, but to be honest, it's a risky business, because when you look at buying shares on the stock market, it's a factor of the environment, and Zimbabwe is not in a good place at the moment. But the world is now a global village. It means that you can even buy shares on the New York Stock Exchange, even if you're in Zimbabwe, by opening accounts and all these apps, which gives you that flexibility. What are the benefits of investing? I think one of the benefits of investing is what they call diversification, because what you're essentially doing is, number 1, our primary source of income is our jobs, but you still need something which can generate money in case you lose your job, and for the time you're looking for something, you can have a cushion. Another benefit of investing is preserving money for the future, because in many cases people are short-term oriented, but investments also forces you to instill some discipline in how you are managing your finances. How do you start, and where do you get information if people are interested? Since I'm not covering anything in terms of start anywhere, start small. Many people wait to get a lot of money before they start investing, but to be honest with you, it doesn't work like that. The first principle obviously goes back to budgeting, and after you've budgeted your income and expenses, the second issue you need to look at is saving. I mean, for some reason I've seen that we come from a culture which do not promote personal savings, but I was reading some youths in the USA, they're saving as much as 50% of their income. And most people, they don't do this. because they want to compete, they want to wear the most expensive clothes, they want to buy the cell phones, but that's a lot of money you can save for the future. Where do you start? I think there's a concept, a technical concept in investments, which is called average cost investing. How it works that, if you take perhaps $200 a month from now and invest it consistently for the rest of your life, perhaps if you live a life of 60-80 years, and in that you add, obviously be investing it on the stock market where you can get capital gains, the lump sum you get at the end literally means you make $1 million. So you discover that in many cases it's not necessarily waiting until you are rich to start investing, it's investing where you are. If I get time, I'll tell you a story about this average cost investing. How long should one invest in something? Investments should always be long-term. I don't believe in short-term investment. I think it's gambling. But you see, at the moment you've got, when we get sent the emails, binary options, FX trading, gifting, and all these complicated things. To be honest, they prey upon the natural limitations of a natural man, because you discover that naturally we are impatient, naturally we want to reap early results, and naturally we are impulsive. But all these things do not boil down well with someone who wants to be involved in investment. So investments is really a long-term waiting game, and it really calls upon men to be disciplined and to be able to wait until something has reached fruition. There could be instances where you can make money quickly in the short term, but easy come, easy go. It's just like people in corruption. That's why they end up spending the money in ways that are unjustifiable, and they cannot trace it. So be long-term oriented and be very patient if you can. Okay, the story. Recently, I had a friend of mine. He's about to retire, and he came to me and said, look, I've got this amount of money. Can you help me speak to investment advisors so that they can help me invest it? So I ran around and made a few phone calls and spoke to some investment advisors, and we got some good recommendations for him, for my friend, which I then passed on. After I done this, I then called the same investment advisor, one of the best ones, and said, look, what can I do also, because I also want to invest. Then he told me, oh, you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I said, look, I don't have a lot of money at the moment. Things are really hard for me, and also with kids going to school, etc., etc. Then he said, no, you don't need a lot of money. In fact, you can start investing with as little as it was about $50 a month. And he even told me about some of these clients who started putting small amounts of money when they were 16, and now those guys are like in their 40s, 50s, and they are saying some of them are almost millionaires, because not only did that small amount of sum of money built onto another small amount of money, but when you combine all of them and you put the impact of capital gain on the investments which they're making, it becomes a lot of money. But like what we're trying to explain is that all of it boils down to patience, long term, and going back to the basics of budgeting. I think people need to just budget and to save. If you're not married, I would say 50% of your income. If you're married and you don't have kids, it could be maybe 40%, etc. But that's the time to start building lots of wealth. I've answered that. Any other opportunity of generating money besides investment? Yeah, I think there are opportunities here and there. If you're still young, you can always get a part-time job at university. Even when you're a bit older, you can start something on the side, just to give you enough to offset what you would have used to buy food. I've got a friend of mine who's selling cakes, and she's working also, so you can tell that it's creating some capacity to be able to invest. So really think outside the box, and don't think something which is too technical. Look for things which are closest to you. People are buying and selling things. I've got friends of mine who are buying and selling clothes and posting them on WhatsApp statuses. And that's a good way, because you're also investing in a business, and in that business in itself allows you to take money from your budget, which in many cases could have been used for unjustifiable expenditure. What are some of the risks that come with investing? Like I mentioned, people are impulsive and can be taken advantage of, and people do not want to understand that we are limited in terms of our ability to process some of these so-called complex investments. So keep things simple, and if you are to invest in something which is complex, please try by all means to get the advice. And I'm trying to look for the practical non-textbooks risks, and there's always the risk of being conned, because in many cases when you invest, we look for someone who appear to know what they are doing, and also their risks which are beyond your control. That could be to do with political risks, which I think for most of us, we know many countries faced with challenging situations, so we need to be aware of those, but keep things simple and straight. I always say, look, if you cannot explain your investment strategy to a 6-year-old or a grandmother who's 80 and has never gone to school, in many cases you're going to lose money. It needs to be that straightforward and that simple. Going forward, can we avoid these risks? Risks cannot be avoided, but rather they have to be managed. If you, let's say you want to start trading shares, listed shares, that's quite risky. So how can you manage it? You can even manage it by involving a financial advisor. You can go and buy what they call units in managed portfolios, where your risk is divested. You can also, bring about a group of friends, whereby instead of you putting all the money for something, you're putting just a little bit, and that in a way manages the risk of failure. You can monitor how things are going, and also deal with people that you trust as an individual, so that you manage the risk. In fact, people who do well in investments, they are also very good at managing the risks. If you remove all the risks, then you might not as well invest. Lastly, what are your thoughts on how we can be empowered about our finances? I think people need to read. I've got a cousin of mine who posted something on Facebook, and they were saying people are not reading. You just need to read books about investments, even the simple books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's the example he gave. Even some of those books which can say how to make $1 million in a year. Most people laugh at the principles in those books, but I tell you, it's not necessarily about the accuracy of the principles in a book, but in tuning your mind to be able to see opportunity where some people do not seeing it, to be able to instill discipline so that you're more future oriented. You're not being a slave queen and spending your money on things which do not profit. So that's what I feel in terms of how we can be empowered. Pick your friends carefully. Some friends you have to lose them, so that when you're in the company of those friends, you know that the things which are being discussed, things to do with being productive and industrious, that will help a lot. I'm left with about a minute. So in terms of final thoughts, I would say that we, sometimes things might be difficult, so don't be hard on yourself. If you're still a student, focus on what needs to be done and get your degree and start working. But what happens with life is that there will always be a time when your income may exceed your expenses. But if you've not planned on what you're going to do with that excess, you'll not be able to invest. So I would say that investment is, rather than it being an activity, it's a discipline. It's a way of doing things, which then allows you to take advantage of the opportunity when it arises, because you would have planned to do so. So thank you. Hopefully you've learned one or two things, and if you need any more information, be sure to get hold of me. I'll probably refer you to the right channels. All the best. Thank you.